We're here.
How are you?
Took long enough, didn't it? Fucking 3 weeks. So I'm just going to give you free reins at the beginning, mate. Do you want to start with you saying about the PTSD and your boy? Do you want to just start with that?
Yeah, I can do, mate. Yeah, of course, yeah. Still a bit of a raw one, if I'm honest, at times. But it's going back to sort of August 22. So my eldest boy, who's now 18, is epileptic. Right. Quite severe. He's had it since he's 2. We've managed it, and there's been ups and downs, mate, to be fair. Yeah. But you just sort of manage as a family. But specific day, summer holidays, I was at home. And he suffered a blackout seizure. Never seen one before in my life. Never heard of one. But he hit the floor in the kitchen. Within seconds, mate, he was ice blue. Gone. Completely different to what I'd seen before.
Had you seen him have fits before?
Seen him have fits before, mate, yeah. And he's had them since he's 2. So they range from, there was times where he was having up to 10, 12 a day. Very small, sort of petty miles.
And without interrupting, we had a guy on the other day, and I asked him, his daughter suffered with, my brain's gone, epilepsy. So I don't think he gave me the question I asked him was, is there different variations of it?
Yes,
I can't remember what he said, but I'll ask you the same question.
So there's one called the grand mal and there's a petit mal. The petit mals is just sort of little myoclonic jerks where sometimes he can be having a conversation and he'll just have a little shudder and that'll be it. Now he could have 12 of them a day when he was younger and it wasn't untoward. But then as he's got older and obviously his hormones and stuff have changed, they've got progressively worse. Takes medication for it daily, doesn't really combat it to a point, it just brings it sort of somewhere normal, mid-range. But the specific day, he just hit the floor, Lee, to be fair, and it was different, and I knew it was different. Within seconds he'd gone blue, his lips had gone blue, eyes had gone completely, whereas normally he's quite vacant, but almost just shaking. This time he was just gone. And it was just something that I'd not seen before, not experienced it before. And it was sheer panic. And I think you don't know how you're going to react in that situation. Yeah. And it's always difficult when it's your own as well.
Definitely.
So to be fair, youngest lad was there. He jumped on 999. Operator came on. Questions that they asked and so on and so forth. And she said, right, he's having a blackout seizure. You need to give him his rescue kit, which is like a syringe that we have. Goes in his cheek.
What's that? Is that like adrenaline or something?
It's like a medicine, mate, yeah. So it just goes in the corner of his cheek and it opens up his airways, helps him to breathe.
Into the face?
Yeah. So it goes in his cheek, swallows it. Within a minute or 2, comes out of it. He's knackered, but it brings him out of the fit. So that went in straight away. That's our instinct, is to put that in. Didn't work. Just nothing at all. Nothing at all. So then it was like, fuck. I don't like this now. I'm now feeling really uncomfortable, really nervous. So the operator says, have you done CPR before? I said, no. She said, do you know how to do it? I said, no. So she taught me through it. So I ended up having to do CPR, mouth to mouth.
Fucking hell.
She said, you need to do that until the first responder comes. So I said, right, okay. So I kept doing it. Very, very strange. Very strange. It almost felt like I wasn't there. It was like a dream. And that was for about 45 minutes.
You've done the whole thing for 45 minutes?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I don't want to go off topic, but my partner, she had to do it on her dad a couple of years ago. He had a heart attack. Okay. She done hers similar 40 minutes, 45 minutes.
Just the most surreal thing that I'll probably ever see, to be honest, mate.
And I know it's a silly question to ask because you do anything for your kids, wouldn't you? But that sort of, you go to the gym and stuff like that, you do something for 40 minutes. You fucked.
Oh, mate, I was goosed.
Well, yeah, but you just kept.
Goosed, but I think it's the adrenaline.
That's what I was going to say.
It wasn't an option.
Yeah.
It was a case of this is what I need to do, so that's what we did. First responder came, and his face told a million stories. That he was really, really concerned. You could just tell. They're normally quite calm, aren't they? The ambulance guys. Yeah. This was the guy in the car, so he was there as quick as he could. He'd come from Dalgathline. Nearest responder.
Wow, that in itself.
Yeah, so that was one of those. But at this time, obviously, we've got dogs. Dogs were going berserk. The youngest was in fits of tears, screaming, "George is going to die! George is going to die!" So I've got all that going.
What's your lad's name? Sorry, Georgie.
George is the oldest one. Yeah,
same as mine.
Oscar's the youngest one. He was in a bit of a state, although he was very good on the phone to the operator.
And how old is he?
He was just 13 at the time.
Fair play to him.
Yeah, he was. Solid, really solid. So he comes, first responder, they talk about defibbing and all that sort of stuff, and he says, but we're going to try once more. So we tried once more with the rescue kit, nothing. and he said, I'm going to potentially have to defib. And I was like, I don't really like where this is going. At this point, George is gone now. His eyes, he bolted his eyes open, and then they went.
When you say gone, you mean heart stopped?
He was dead, mate. He was dead, mate.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, he was, and we've jumped into this pretty quickly.
No, and I think...
But he was, and I knew in my heart of hearts that he was dying. But something in you just doesn't accept it. And out of nowhere, I don't know where you get the strength from in these moments, and you see it on the TV.
From your children, I think.
You do, and you see it on films, don't you? You think, you see people lifting cars to get the dog from underneath and all stuff. And out of nowhere, I just sort of picked him up, and I managed to get a rescue kit in, and half of it went in, and he pinged his eyes open. They put the air mask on him, and he took a big in-breath, and the guy said, right, I'm just going to take him. So they whizzed him, and that was that. But I just sat on the floor, absolutely just in pieces. Didn't know what hit me, mate. Didn't know what it was.
Fucking hell.
Really sort of a quick shock to the system in an hour that you just never thought was going to happen. And I can still see it. I remember just sort of sat on the kitchen floor in shock, just in floods and floods of tears.
I bet you were.
Mrs. went to the hospital with him.
Was your missus at home when that happened?
Mrs. was in work at the time, so
she's a nurse as well.
She's a nurse. She reacts differently
to
it.
Yeah.
She's a lot calmer in that situation.
My missus is a nurse. So when she was doing CPR for 40 odd minutes, I'm not going to say it comes naturally to them, but they're trained to do it, aren't they?
They are. And I'm not. I would say that I'm normally.
But 45 minutes, mate. That's serious, and like you say. He's your boy, isn't he? So you could be there for 3 hours and you're not going to stop, are you?
But whilst you're doing it, you're thinking of all things. Am I doing this right? Is what I'm doing correct? Am I actually helping him, or am I making it worse? You start doubting things. It's a long time. It's not just for sort of 60 seconds. So he was taken into sort of ICU, and I just sat on the floor, Lee, and I didn't know what it was at the time, but just utter shock, in fits of tears. And I think the aftermaths of that then is sort of what's led really to my sort of mental health journey, if I'm honest.
You're saying, so that's where it sort of all began there? Yeah,
so that was in the August. Called into work. I was in quite a high profile job at the time. But from that point onwards, I was never the same. And I would say from sort of the August through till the December, really struggled.
Just rewinding a little bit there, after... He's in the hospital laying up.
Yeah.
Did he have any type of... Were they nervous that he had any type of brain damage or anything like that with him? With you saying, obviously, you thought that you thought he passed away or his heart stopped? Yeah,
so they do all the tests, don't they? They do the CT scans, the MRIs, they do everything, they monitor SATs and everything. And there was a little bit of sort of, obviously, amount of burst blood vessels in his eyes and stuff from the fit itself. So a little bit of vision, a little bit of hearing damage. But, touch wood, he's okay. It took a little bit of recuperation time because I think those people that have got epilepsy or know of it, the amount it takes out of the body is unbelievable.
After each fit, you mean?
Yeah. So even if he used to have a small one today, he'll sleep for 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 hours sometimes.
Would he? Yeah.
Because he's just goosed. So the effects of a blackout seizure was just huge for him. He's 18 now, but there's not much of him. He's 6 stone wet through.
Is he? Yeah.
So there's not a lot of him. So to have that impact on the body was quite stressful for him.
With epilepsy, you've got seizures you can have from strobes and lights and stuff like that, can't you?
Yep.
What's the blackout? Is that where it's
just a complete loss of the chemical in the brain? Yeah. So we don't know what causes George's. Like I say, he's had it from what started as like a febrile convulsion, and then it's just got progressively worse. We don't think it's lights or strobes or anything like that. We do potentially think there's an element of stress in there.
I was just about to say stress.
If you get stress or anxious, we do think that's a leading factor in it. He's got some learning difficulties and stuff as well, so that's quite difficult to manage because...
Due to the incident, due to what happened?
No, he's had that for a number of years, but that can be a high factor in his stress. Yeah. So, for those people, again, that know about learning difficulties and autism, he can be stressed over someone moving his trainer. So towards it's very little, but to him it can have a huge impact on his health. My brother, he grew up with a speech impediment and ADHD, so he couldn't speak very well when he was younger. And Again, I've said it on one of the other podcasts, but I was the only one who could understand him. Yeah. So he'd smash his classroom to bits.
and they'd call me down and say, you know, he's going mad, and I'd say, what's up, Scott? And he'd go, to me, to anybody else, you couldn't understand what he was saying, and I'd say, you need the toilet.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it'd smash the classroom to
it can.
pieces.
Yeah. Something so small can be something so big in their world. So elements of stress that we find that can then lead to the days afterwards can potentially lead to a seizure.
Right.
So we do try and limit the stress that he has. But in general, touch wood, he's recovered okay from it.
That's good.
Luckily. I think it's me that's sort of took the brunt of it in a way.
And I know, like you said, we went into that a bit early then, but I think we were always going to talk about it. I mean, I think it's good for what you just said and the detail that you went into for people watching this, or who are going to watch it, with young children who've got similar symptoms to your boy.
Yeah, of course, and I think it's you know, we never think we're going to have to do it. I never thought I would ever have to do CPR, and I certainly never thought I'd have to do it on my son. So for those people that aren't aware of CPR, I'd strongly suggest having a look into it. There's 15-minute videos where you can educate yourself.
You can book in with, like, I'm a first aider in work, and I think they're about 65 quid per person with the Red Cross or something like that.
Well worth doing.
Yeah. But they teach you defib training and all that.
Yeah,
you get all that. So
really worthwhile having it. Like I say, I didn't have it, and I'm so lucky that, you know, we all take for granted, don't we, the NHS when we talk about it. But the lady on the end of that phone that day was fantastic. Yeah, absolutely fantastic.
They've got to have a different set of stones on them, like the way they speak.
Mate, she was so calm, and it made me. I was erratic at times. I was. She brought me down a notch or two to enable me to be able to. And
I think that's what they've got to do, haven't they? You know, with stuff like that, 100%. They can't panic and do this, do that, because then you're going to panic, and No, I think that was a good way to start. To be honest, you know, I think it got me a bit emotional just because your lad's name's George. My lad's name's Georgie. And I could see you know, you said outside before that you still find it difficult to come to terms with.
I do. It's funny, and obviously, you know, we touched on sort of the after effects of that. Was then that for 3 or 4 months after it, I just couldn't get to grips with it. Yeah. And I didn't know what it was at the time. I was just suffering all sorts of different emotions. And
is this is where your PTSD stems from?
Yeah. So for 3 or 4 months after, I was just all over the place. Night terrors, visualizing the moment it happened, replaying it in my head. Could I have done any more? Was it my fault? Should I have been watching him? All the things that you would go through in an incident like that. And then with that then came the change in mood. Was up and down and angry, upset, tearful. You know, I could be driving to work in a great mood, and then out of the blue, fits of tears.
Really, yeah.
Pulling doors off the hinges at home. Just so, I wouldn't say out of character, because I think we've all got elements of that in us.
Yeah, we've all got it.
But it just came out of the blue. You know, I was quite settled, had a great job, good money, nice house, nice car, great family, but then all of a sudden, it just sort
means fuck all though when you're in that.
Yeah. My whole mental health just nosedived. And then literally the day before Christmas that year, stepped away from my job. Just I couldn't get my head around trying to work and run a multi-million-pound business alongside what had happened.
Right.
So something had to give.
Yeah.
So stepped away from that, and I think that's when really it all it got progressively worse, was because I didn't have work to focus on. I wasn't training as much, so the only thing in my head was this trauma.
Right. So you're just living with it then on a daily basis, aren't you?
Couldn't shake it.
Yeah.
Couldn't shake it at all.
So obviously you went to the doctors. Did they diagnose you straight away with PTSD?
I didn't go to the doctors, and I think this
as a man, that's what we do.
I was just going to say, as we've spoke about, and as you have with the guys that have been on previously, I bottled it up. Yeah. And I'd take it out on the people that were nearest to me at the time. So whether that would be the kids or the dogs or the missus or the mum or whatever, it was taken out on them.
Drinking? You're not really a massive drinker, are you?
Not a massive drinker, mate. No, I would say that I didn't really lean into anything other than I just couldn't get out of this mood. At the time, I was suffering from some physical health conditions as well. I had sciatica and a back issue and stuff, so that wasn't helping.
So you can't really get out and about to try and...
No, so normally my go-to would be just to get out and have a walk. Get out, clear my head, a little bit of solitude, clear my head. I couldn't do that as much because I wasn't very mobile. So what crept in for me was the painkillers.
Right, okay.
A lot of painkillers, different types of painkillers that were prescribed, painkillers that weren't. And I think that then sent me into a pit.
Were you using not going to say as an excuse, but were you using like the sciatica as an excuse to try and get more pain?
I think it was, mate.
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah.
And
my back's hurt and I need something stronger.
Yeah, I'll take some more.
Yeah.
Occasionally I might take them with a shot of whiskey
Yeah.
or whatever. And because I was off work at the time, Mrs. was in work, kids were in school, I was home alone for 10, 12 hours a day.
It's like a jail cell in your mind, then, isn't it?
Yeah, I had a massive sense of cabin fever. So it was a case of, I'll have 2 more of them and 2 more of them, and then I couldn't sleep at night, so then 2 more had come in.
Yeah.
And then you become dependent on them. But off the back of that, the side effects of it was the mood just absolutely plummeted. At the lowest I've ever been. And there was a day. It's funny, isn't it, how you remember days and times and dates. There was a day where, I decided that I was done.
Really?
Yeah, that was me, mate. I was done, and it wasn't for any other reason than I couldn't see a way out of it. You know, I'd lost my job effectively, and the trauma of what I'd been through, I just couldn't see how I would ever get it out of my head. And I think it's a funny one, isn't it, really, the suicide thing, that I would class myself as very resilient, very strong. But the minute that crept into my head, it made sense. It made a lot of sense. And you almost then are doing the pros and cons of it. And the pros of it outweighed the cons of it.
So Daniel, who came on last week, the guy who works for the NHS, again, I don't know if you've seen it, but he said similar things to a lot of us. The thoughts creep in, and he said it's just like a light switch. Mine was on the day that I went to. Well, I didn't do it obviously, but the day that I was going to, it was a light switch. And he said it, and again, you're saying pretty much the same thing. You just wake up one day and you're like, I've had enough. It was
exactly that. You know, I was stood making a coffee, and it was exactly that came to me. Do you know what? I think I'm done. I'd sort of worked out that, we've got quite a good support network within the family, so the kids will be fine. Laura will be fine. She's got, good friends, good family, good job. She'll be able to be, the kids are getting to a point now where they're not as dependent on us. So in my head, there was no reason to not do it.
See, that now that you're past it, sorry to interrupt you, but now that you put, it's madness, isn't
ludicrous, it? Ludicrous, mate. Absolutely ludicrous.
I look at it now, my own story, and I think, what the fuck were you thinking?
Yeah.
But at the time, you just don't see no other option.
No, and you see it, don't you, where people say, it's selfish to do that. But I didn't see that. I thought it was the opposite of selfish. I thought I was selfish by putting people through what I was going through. So it made sense to me to not be there. That's what it made sense. To a point where, sat in the garage underneath a rope.
Did you?
Only the fact, and it's a bit strange being a builder and doing the mountain leader course, that I didn't know how to tie a noose.
Really?
Yeah. It's simple as that. I had it tied, and I was literally sat on my phone Googling how to tie a noose, attempting it. And the only thing that stopped me was my dog.
Do you know what? I knew then you were going to say a dog. I knew it.
And I think people that follow me on social media and know me well know exactly what my dogs mean to me.
Yeah.
And I think unless you've got dogs, you probably don't get it.
Yeah.
But the bond I had with my eldest dog at the time, and to this day I don't know, mate. I don't know. The gate was shut, and he somehow got out of the gate, and he just toddled off, and he just sat in front of me in the garage. And it was at that moment I just thought, what the fuck am I doing? What am I doing? I can't leave this little dog.
Yeah.
None of the other
stuff. Not your kids or your missus.
None of the other stuff, because I'd sort of made peace with that. It was the dog. And that was it, and I just thought, right.
I can see by your face even, so again, sorry to interrupt, but the emotions of talking about your lad and stuff like that, and you were really down. And again, I'm not saying you love your dog more than your kids.
It's funny, isn't it?
But as soon as you've spoke about the dog there, your face is lit up.
Yeah, it is, and it's a funny one with animals, isn't it? That he's only got me. That's what I thought. That dog's only got me. The kids have got grandparents and friends and family. Yeah. The dogs have only got me. And I just couldn't, and that was it. So that came down, and to be fair, the missus came home, and I was completely transparent with her.
Did you tell her, did you?
Told
straight
her,
away?
Ironically or not, she's a psychiatric nurse.
Yeah.
So she'd sort of been seeing me go through it for a couple of months, but we'd spoke about it, but I don't think she was aware of how bad I felt. And there was almost an element of that she was my wife and not my therapist.
And I suppose if you're not there yet, I suppose the conversation's a bit easier when you've tied the rope and then you've walked away from it. But before you've done all that, like you say, with the job that your missus does as well, as men, you'd probably think she doesn't need to listen to this shit.
Yeah, she doesn't need it. She has it 12 hours a day. She doesn't need me to
I understand that. I get that, yeah.
And then who else are you going to speak to?
Yeah. The dog.
the dog. You know, I didn't want to go and put it on mates. I didn't want to go and put it on family. And, you know, the amount of people that sort of said to me, oh, you know, just man up, or come on, you'll get through it.
It's bollocks, that, though.
But they hadn't been there.
Yeah, I get
you know, we've all been stressed and depressed and anxious, but no one had actually seen what I'd seen. So to tell me to man up was a bit insulting.
Nobody knows your story apart from you.
No.
And that's, you know, the individuality of every one of all of our different circumstances. And my story's different to yours. I had a conversation with a friend of mine a couple of years ago. He's been to war, and he said, talking about PTSD, and I said, I struggle a lot. He said, well, you can't struggle. You've never been to war. I said, yeah, but, you know, this has happened, this has happened, this has happened. And he was like, oh, fuck, I didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're all individuals, and we all struggle in our own mind.
Of course, yeah. And I think that's what then, that conversation with Laura was the key fact, was that she said you need to get professional help.
Yeah.
And I'd always been one of those, mate, to be fair, probably similar to yourself and other guys. I'm not sitting with some woman in a room, plant pot in the corner, pearl necklace on, ridiculing me, or almost sort of looking down the nose at me. I'm not doing that. But I knew that I needed to do something. Yeah. So I did. I went privately, and yeah, I went to CBT therapy. And hand on heart, the best thing I've ever done.
Was it?
Yeah, 100%. So from being really sceptical with it to almost now being a huge advocate of it, it changed my whole outlook within probably 4 sessions.
Really, yeah?
Yeah, as quick as that. And I would say within the first one, I felt instantly better. And then it was probably the second one where she diagnosed me with PTSD. And as you say there, you expect guys in war to have that, not someone that's just a normal guy like us. But it was trauma. It was a trauma that was unprocessed, and that's what PTSD is. So, and it can be from anything. It can be from grief. It can be from losing your pet. It can be from anything. But if you do not process that trauma, it leads to PTSD.
I think, again, a conversation I've had in the past is about trauma, especially my own trauma, and the mistakes and bad things that I've done in life. I think the only real time that I got better and started to improve my own life is when you come, I don't want to say come to terms with stuff that you've done, but you sit in front of the mirror, you address yourself, you look at yourself, and you address whatever's wrong, whatever that may be, whatever issues you've got going on, whether it's suicidal thoughts, drug abuse, traumatic experiences from when you were a kid, things that haven't gone right in your life, failed relationships, failed parenthood, whatever that could be. Until you sit there and actually address what's wrong with me, and we all know what's wrong with us, I think. So when you dig down deep enough, you can sit on the end of your bed, you know what's wrong with you.
Yeah, it's changing it that's the hard part.
Yeah.
It is. And I think just voicing it sometimes. And I think once I'd got all those emotions out and someone knew how I felt, there was no judgment, there was no finger pointing. It was, we're going to process this. And we talked over the incident over and over again to a point where it then just became a memory and not a trauma. So I can talk to you now about it, and I've got no emotion to it. It doesn't upset me. I can still visualise it.
You can still see the emotion on your face.
I think it'll always be etched there, Lee, if I'm honest. But I think
you've just got the tools to learn to deal with it now.
Yeah. So now I've processed it. It's just an incident that happened now. It's no different to me watching a film. I can see it all, but it doesn't upset me. For 3 or 4 months afterwards, I couldn't even talk about it. Couldn't even as soon as someone broached the subject, I'd be in pieces with it. I want to touch on CBT after we stop for the half an hour, because we're going to have a good discussion on that. But how did the man-to-man group help? That was something that I stumbled on out of coincidence, and probably helped me more than I realised.
Same.
Completely coincidence that I was at the park with the dogs, and I saw 2 guys on the goalpost doing some calisthenics. Intrigued me. Went over, started the conversation, turned out to be Carl and Dane.
Right.
Just opened up a conversation, really, just in the middle of the park, and I thought, great guys, and I think because of where I was in my life, I was more open to a conversation.
Yeah.
I think I found at that time I was speaking to strangers. I was just looking for some sort of integration to try and find something.
Were you finished with CBT at this time, or were you still going through it?
I hadn't started it yet.
All right, okay.
I hadn't quite started it.
Okay.
It was sort of the back end of the year, and they sort of told me about the group. Would I be interested? At the time, I was a bit like, not sure. Don't really know much about that. A bit awkward. Joined the WhatsApp group, and I think instantly it was this is a really good arena
definitely.
to be able to. And what I liked was that nobody raised an eyebrow, nobody judged. It was a case of I told my story. There was no real sympathy or empathy. It was just voice it.
Yeah.
And sometimes just getting it out there was the starting point for me.
It's the start of the healing, isn't it?
It was, and you know, the guys have been great, and you know, I've used the group now for well over 12 months, dipped in and out, and I find that the more I'm in it, the better I am.
Yeah,
mental
definitely.
health. When I step away and have periods out of it, I find that sometimes I can delve a little bit down into those lower moods again.
Right, mate, we'll stop now, have 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the CBT.
Thank you.
Cool. Much about you, even with the man. Obviously, we haven't seen each other much, have we? No. But listening to what you've just said definitely made me understand the things I've heard from you a lot more in the past. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does, and I think if I'm being really honest as well, I think that was a turning point in my life. I think I was on a path that at the time I thought was the right one. You know, you're following a career path, you're following the money, you like the nice things.
And without sounding like an absolute arsehole, because I've never heard this, I've only heard the, you know, in charge of big companies and doing. I think, has he really got mental health?
Yeah.
Not in a bad way, but
no,
you hear that story there, mate, and it hit.
Yeah, of course. If I'm honest as well, though, I think I've always struggled with it. I think probably for 20 odd years, there's always been that depression in me. I've always suffered from low moods. But I think, you know, once you're in a great job, you feel like you should be more grateful for stuff, so you sort of tend to push in a different direction. But I genuinely think that morning was a turning point in my life.
It's a
And I think for the better, in a strange way.
Yeah.
In a strange way. What happened was fucking horrific.
It's hit me. It's hit me emotionally, that, to be fair.
But I think within the space of a couple of months, my complete mindset changed.
Did it?
From what I thought I wanted to be and where I wanted to be to now where I want to be. It's completely different.
Well, now you're saying you want to eventually up sticks and
do you know,
go and live out in the wild.
You know, you think, don't you, at some point, you know, I was 41 or something at the time, so you think, you know, 6 figures salary, great car, you think that's where you want to be. Yeah. Because that's the sort of the circle that you surround yourself with.
Right.
So, you know, the company I was working for, that's what people had, and that's what they deemed as success. And that's great, that's absolutely fine. But I think from that moment onwards for me, it was a question that was raised in the CBT therapy, where we did 3 or 4 sessions, and she sort of closed off one of the sessions, and she said, I'm going to ask you a question. I don't want you to answer it today. I want you to take it away. Next session, I want you to come back and answer it.
I hope it's not the same question I'm going to ask you in a minute. Go on.
She said, maybe it is. She said, I want you to answer this genuinely. She said, who is Lee Williams? And I felt like I could have answered that on the spot, but she said, no, I want you to really answer the question. So I drove home, and I couldn't answer it, mate. It took me about 2 weeks to even come close to answering it. And I think if everybody asked themselves that question, you would think, you know, businessman, father, into my sports. And that's not what she meant. What she meant was, who are you? Who are you deep down? So I went soul searching for a little bit. And again, it was the dogs, mate. It was being out in nature, in my dirty boots with my dogs, was where I felt the most comfortable. Obviously, that's not going to make me money. It's not going to put a roof over my head. But that's who I felt I was. And it's a strange thing to go from being sort of up there to almost having next to nothing, not spending on clothes, not spending on meals out. It was, I don't need any of that anymore. And it was almost like I completely disowned that section of my life. Strange.
My question was, if you've seen the higher end of life, shall we say?
Yeah.
You've seen the lower end of life where you've struggled, and well, you've probably seen the three different, low, medium, high.
Yeah.
One, I suppose, obviously, the life that we live in now, everything's financial, everything's, money orientated. I know what my answer is. Does money make you happy?
No.
It doesn't, does it?
No. I think it's very short-lived. It gives you that dopamine rush. So buying, for me, it was trainers, mate, and stuff like that.
Same.
To go and spend £300, £400 on a pair of trainers was great. But then I'd noticed that I'd maybe only wear them 2 or 3 times.
And then they'd sit in the cupboard.
And I'd end up sticking them on eBay for £100 a year later. So at the time, it felt great, and it felt great to go to the races and have these expensive meals and nice holidays with the wife and stuff. And it felt great at the time.
Yeah.
But looking back, I don't necessarily think I was doing it for me. I think it was just to create almost
the facade,
smoke and mirrors, mate, perception.
Yeah.
Oh, isn't he doing well? And I think growing up in the upbringing, where I didn't have a lot, so to speak.
You want to prove it to yourself a little bit, maybe
it was
as well.
prove people wrong as well a little bit. Hasn't he done well since he left school with no qualifications?
Similar.
Hasn't he done well?
Similar, yeah.
But I think looking back on that now, it didn't make me happy.
Yeah.
It probably added more stress to my life, if I'm honest. Trying to keep up appearances.
So what to you now? And again, I don't want to say this the wrong way, but take what happened to your son out of it.
Yeah.
What to you now? What makes you smile? What makes you happy?
It's a funny one, isn't it? Because it's almost just contentment. So there isn't one specific thing, but I find that solitude does, which sounds strange. I do like my own company.
Yeah, and me.
I do like my own company. So and if I'm feeling a bit low, rather than surround myself with people, I prefer to just get out in the hills.
Yeah.
And just sort
isolation.
of reset. And it's the little things that bring me happiness now. It's those what used to be a 2-week in Mexico holiday is now just 4 days in Scotland in the pissing down rain with a book and a fire. That's what makes me content. So I think contentment is now my happiness. And it can be simple things, like I say, just sitting by a beach, just looking at the stars, just having that ability to sort of be present.
Biggest one, I think, being present.
Yeah, and I didn't even understand what that meant. No. I genuinely didn't understand what that meant until I was sort of, you're part of the man-to-man group and people mention it and you start to understand it a bit more, and then the therapy sessions as well. And I don't think I was present for 15, 20 years.
Exactly the same.
I don't, mate.
Exactly the same.
I don't.
All through my 20s and early 30s, I don't think I was present once.
No, you're doing stuff to please other people, you're part of sporting groups, and your life is so busy, obviously having kids quite young and stuff. You're just always on to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing.
You're always working to fulfill another objective.
I never found contentment in anything I did, and now I do. Now I will literally, my missus laughs. What are you looking at out the window? Nothing. I'm just looking. I'm just sort of appreciating that I can look out of a window, so to speak. So I think, in answer to the question, what makes me happy is probably now being me for the first time ever. And it's probably not what people would think I am. The guy in the dirty boots covered in spaniel slobber and dog biscuits in his pockets is what genuinely makes me happy. Being with my wife and my children, being comfortable and content, and I think a lot can be said for that.
But what spaniels have you got?
Got working cockers.
Have you?
Yeah.
I grew up with Springers, I did.
Bonkers.
Fucking crazy.
Yeah, man is a box of frogs, but literally, and it's not a lie. It saved my life.
Yeah.
And continue to do so, because it gives me that. It gives me that reason to get out of bed in the morning. I
wanted to say before, I can't remember the guy's name, but I think he's got the world record for the longest kill in Iraq, sniper.
Oh yes,
the big guy.
Yeah.
And similar thing, he put a gun to his head in America a hotel room.
That's right.
And his dog was sat on the other side of the room, and all the dog did was tilt his head.
Yeah.
And he said straight away, burst into tears.
Yeah, they set off emotions in you that I didn't realise I had. Yeah. And especially now the boys are getting older, that bond and that sort of emotional connection with my dogs has been key for me. It's been key in my well-being as well.
I think me and you have got a lot more things in common than I thought, a lot more. I'm glad we've had this conversation.
Yeah, it's mad, it is mad.
So, CBT, talk to me about that.
So, as I said, I was reluctant at first, didn't know a lot about it other than, the perceived sort of therapy shrink, so to say. Yeah. But I knew that I needed to do something. So, went and wasn't what I expected. I thought it would be quite a judgmental environment. I thought they would ask questions going back 20, 30 years about family members and stuff, and it wasn't. It was purely the trauma. Let's discuss it.
So it was focus based around what happened with your boy?
On the first session, she didn't know what it was. She didn't know why I was there. I just booked a session. So they asked a few questions, and then it was pinpointed to this trauma. And then from there, they helped with the processing. And then sort of just helping you manage it.
What sort of tools do they try and make you, if somebody's listening now, if they want to, it's something that they want to
I think it's probably quite individual. So I think it probably depends on the reason for going.
Do they not have like a generic process that they go through maybe, or is it more based on your character?
I think it's based on your character as well, because people will have different triggers for it. I'd found I was getting really bad panic attacks, anxiety, which I'd never suffered from before. So, we'd go to I'd do the big shop on a Saturday, and my arse would fall out, mate. I just couldn't handle it.
I don't like being around loads of people to this day.
And I'd never experienced that before, and that was part of the PTSD. So she sort of helped me understand that. So it's more a case of helping you understand it, and then dependent on your coping mechanisms, moving it forward on that. So for me, a lot of mine was speaking, talking to people. I've got a massive tendency of bottling things up, as a lot of guys do. And so it's encouraged me to be open about it. And the amount of people that I'll openly tell about what happened now compared to what I thought I would tell, poles apart. So she's really encouraged me to sort of, be open about it, face your emotions. And there is a few little coping mechanisms in there as well for sort of, depression and anxiety and anger. But as a whole, I found the experience life-changing.
Do you feel like the gym's a big coping mechanism for you, or has been when you've needed it?
Yeah, it was. Yourself, I went through that sort of big prep last year, and that was something for me to sort of take my mind off everything else. It's a great tool, and obviously you had Daz on the other week and stuff, and he's the biggest advocate, isn't he, for it? But it was a place where I could go, and almost it was that solitude, headphones in, an hour to myself to really focus on something other than what was going on outside of life. So for me, the gym, it's so important for me.
I agree.
I think it's just, as a dad and a working husband and stuff, it's difficult to find the time
definitely,
sometimes. But I know that it is such a big part of my life, and it has to stay in there.
Like you say, it's there when you need it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a friend you don't know you need.
It's interesting what you say about not being around loads of people. I've always tried to figure out why I don't like being around. I hate it. Like me and my missus went to watch Paul Smith.
Okay.
The Joker.
Yeah.
But you've got to go into that basement, haven't you? I don't know if you've been there.
I've seen it on there.
You go down the staircase and you're in like a little basement. Bear in mind, I'm fucking 6'6", and there's just chair, and like the roof's here, and like we were sat at the back, so all I could see was heads and people. 15 minutes in, one of the guys was on before him. He's telling these jokes, everyone's laughing, and I was stoned. I wasn't listening to a word he was saying. All I was looking at was, is he looking at me? Because can they see behind me? Is he doing? And my missus looked at me and she went, "Do you want to go?" I went, "Yeah." Walked straight up, got out, and left. And luckily enough, the bouncer said, "What's up with you, mate?" And I was like having a massive anxiety attack outside. This was only a year ago, maybe.
It's horrible.
And luckily enough, the bouncer said, "Well, Paul Smith's just down there in the next room. Do you want to go and have your photo with him?" I said, "Oh, yeah, cool." Took my photo with him. Fucked off. Didn't even watch him in the end.
It does, and it presents itself at the strangest times for me, because I didn't know I was having it. So it would literally just be in the queue at Tesco, and then it would just come over, and it was a case of I couldn't manage it, so it was basket down, out. And it was sponsored out. It was like, oh God, decompress sort of thing. And it still, it still does kick in occasionally. We've not long been on holiday, and the airport was the same for me. I just wish that I could control it in a slightly more, in a more friendlier way. My sort of anxiety and panic attacks tend to come out in anger.
Do they?
Yeah, they do.
Silence miners.
Yeah, and I think it depends on the severity of it, the environment I'm in. But if I'm feeling anxious and someone almost tries to press me on it, it makes me worse. Yeah. Customs guys in Morocco, for example, it's not a place you want to be standing arguing with people. But yeah, when it's there, I do struggle to shake it still. So still using the coping mechanisms for that, and it is getting better. And I think it's something you have to accept.
What are some of your personal coping mechanisms then?
I think a lot of it is I don't know if you've read the book, and I know it's been mentioned on the man-to-man thing at time. It's the chimp, isn't it?
I've just bought it now.
Steve.
Yeah, I don't know.
I can't remember his name.
I haven't started. I've got about 7 books that I've bought and I haven't read any.
Do you know what? I've started it and I've stopped it and I've started it and I've stopped it. But there's an element in there that I always remember, and it's about the chimp in your brain. That you've either got the logical side, which most people have, or your chimp takes over, and your chimp is your emotional side.
Yeah.
My reaction to probably 95% of things that happen in my life is my chimp. It's always a knee-jerk reaction or an angry emotion. I never really sit back and, before I speak, think. So I do try and do that now. If I feel the anxiety coming on or I feel a low mood, I always try and think, well, hang on a minute. That's not me. That sounds a bit cheesy, doesn't it? That's my chimp. But I think once you understand that there's a reason for it and you can flick it either way, I find that a lot of the situations I'm in, I adapt a lot better for it.
I think I'm the polar opposite on that one, to be honest. I think, well, am I? Maybe not. Pain-wise, I've acted stupid a lot in my life, so that's the chimp. you know, where you'll make stupid decisions based on an argument, or you've been hurt, or somebody pissed you off.
Yeah.
Not so much an aggression, mine have just, I don't know, it's a difficult one, that. I have to think about that. Because I've always thought...
It's an overreaction, Lee, that's what it is. It's an overreaction to somebody making a comment that I know there's no malice in it, but I've just taken it the wrong way. And sometimes people, it's not what they say, it's how they say it. And I think when your chimp's taken over, that little comment from the wife or from someone on a checkout, it can change your day. Yeah. So I think for me, it's really a case of that moment can then change my week, which can change my month. So I do try and keep a lid on it as best as possible.
The chimp paradox, it's called, isn't it?
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, chimp paradox.
That's it, yeah.
For anyone who wants it.
It's a great book, yeah, it is. I've dipped in and out of it half a dozen times. But I think that for me is really trying to think before I action, which is difficult at times. It is difficult. But other than that, I think it's just really trying to not put myself in situations where I'm uncomfortable. So if I know I'm genuinely going to struggle with something, whereas previously I would have gone or done something, now I'll just categorically say no. And I don't feel any remorse for that. Oh, you come out for a beer Saturday? Nah.
And that's one of the big things I've done with my life over the last 18 months, 12 months, 18 months maybe, is just, same as you, I can live with myself, I can live with me inside my own head, no problem. I've always been able to do it since I was a kid.
Yeah.
If I'm on my own for 4 days, easy, not a problem. If I'm okay, if I'm struggling, then that's a whole different ballgame.
It's tricky then, isn't it?
But I think, again, that's what I've just took myself away from environments that I know are no good for me at this moment in time. That could be something as simple as going to watch the football in the pub on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
For me, for the last 12 months, 18 months, that hasn't been an option because of my mindset and my mind frame and trying to get better. You know, when you're trying to get over an addiction or you're trying to get over a mental issue, you're not going to put yourself in an environment where you can fail, are you?
No, it's hard enough, isn't it, without being in that toxic environment?
Yeah.
And I think it's just once you understand that and you make conscious decisions to not do it, I think things do improve, and they've improved quickly.
Yeah.
You know, when I look at where I am now compared to 12 months ago, so far apart, it's unbelievable.
And say my missus, she's a nurse, she said the same about me from 15, 18 months ago. She said there's a massive difference in you now from where you were, just in your output. Everything that you do is different.
Yeah.
You know, whereas I think, you've got to put things like that in place. If you want to be better, you've got to do better.
Of course you have, and especially when you're a father and you're a husband and stuff. You know, nobody wants to see that, especially not in your own house. So there is times where I still will hide away a little bit.
I think we'll always have that.
You can't lie and say I'll front up every problem I have, because you can't physically do that.
No.
There's a time and a place I do think that where I'm 43 soon, where I do still need to be a little bit stoic. I do still need to be of that sort of age-old, I will man up to a point.
Yeah.
Certain situations. But there's also now I understand when I need to speak, when I need to be alone, when I want company. So I do think the CBT was a big advocate of that. I think it's made me realise who I am.
Did the CBT training allow for alone time?
Yeah, it does. I think you just have to be very careful in that initial point.
And that's why I say alone time and not isolation, because I think they're two completely different things.
Yeah. I think depending on what your mood is, I think being alone can sometimes make things worse. Especially if you're an overthinker like me.
Yeah.
You know, I overthink everything. So I think there was times when I was really low where I did actually want to be with people. I might not want to sort of incorporate myself in a conversation or be too involved, but it was nice just to sometimes sit on the outside and be around people and not feel completely lonely. So again, it's one of those where it's very circumstantial for me now. I will pick and choose who I'm with. I'll pick and choose what I go to, where I go, who I go with. And your circle becomes very small, very quickly.
Yeah.
And it's not always a bad thing.
It's not. And I've said, a lot of the guys that I don't see anymore, I love them all. They're still all my friends. But for me, from where I am, it's nothing against anybody. People are living normal lives. It's just, for me, it's where I am and the mindset that I'm in, and sort of the fragile side of me. I just, at this moment in time, I'm enjoying doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Working, go to the gym. Now I'm back in the gym. Go home, just do something with, come walk the dog. You know, the kids come round. Well, my son, he's nearly 16, so we barely see him now.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. But obviously I have my daughter, and then me missus, and it's dead basic now. I mean, life's been stripped back completely.
It's that contentment now, isn't it? The things you're doing now, you're comfortable doing. You're not forcing things. And I think once people find that, I think things just become crystal clear. Crystal clear. You know, I make time now for things that I didn't previously make time for.
Yeah.
And it makes a difference to my well-being.
We had the conversation on the WhatsApp group the other week when we were talking about sobriety.
Yeah.
And like you said to me, there's nothing wrong with going for a couple of pints.
Yeah.
So over the last X amount of months, I've gone out with my missus, and I've, you know, I had the odd pint. We went to Chester the other week. I think we had a couple of pints in Chester. I had one in the Swan, and then I went home. You know, I was at the house 4 hours maybe.
Yeah.
We had a drink the other night in the house playing cards. Something that I've never, you know, I've never done that in my life.
Yeah.
Just me and her sat there. I cooked a meal for us. We had the food, and then we had Baby Guinness is playing cards. Whoever loses in blackjack is a Baby Guinness.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah, it's a different environment, isn't it?
Yeah, it was weird. Over the last 2 years, there's never really been a point where I drink. Within the last 3 years, two out of the 3 years where I was fucking depressed and suicidal, drinking, drugs. Yeah. There was never one moment where I drunk and enjoyed it.
No, I don't think I ever have, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Ever. I think it was always social groups, functions, and being around that friends group that it always involved drink. It was never really me. Whereas once I stepped away from it, and I did this, you know, I did the sobriety a good 6 or 7 months whilst I was doing a bit of a prep and stuff, and it worked for me. Yeah. But then I wanted a glass of wine. Yeah. I want a Guinness on a Friday night.
Yeah.
I think it's just discipline, and it's the same with anything, isn't it? You know, there's lads that binge eat, there's lads that, you know, drink drugs. I think if you've got control of it and you've got that little bit of discipline, I know that I don't need to have more than 1 or 2 glasses of wine. That fits the need. Great. And I think if you enjoy it as well. Yeah. Some people drink and they don't enjoy it. I enjoy a nice glass of wine.
And that's what I was saying. That over the last, through COVID, I hated it, but I drink to block out all the other shit that was going on. Yeah. But like I say, the other night, mate, playing cards, sat in the kitchen or on the dining table, happy as Larry.
Exactly.
Went to bed, snored my head off, you know. And it's just new. That's new things for me. I've never.
It's age, mate.
But that's what we say about being present.
Exactly.
Through my 20s, I never did anything like that. You know, I'm never. Yeah. It was always, if you're drinking, you're out with everybody else in the street. You're all in the pub, out. You know what I mean? But I wish I'd have started doing things like that a lot younger, because I loved it. It was great.
Yeah, and I think you do. I think once you hit 40, the magic 4 you do, your perception of things changes, and you do things in a selfish way, really. You know, if you're happy playing cards and having a glass of wine, then that's what you do. You don't really worry about what other people say, whereas 10 years ago, you get ridiculed for that. So you'd go, all right, I'll come out then. And then
I think you've got to be a little bit selfish. The older you get, and we all want to live life's not always going to be happy. It's not always sunshine and rainbows, is it? But you want a content life. You want to be able to enjoy life. And I think, I think that it's that being present. It's
the little things. You know, it's the little things. And I got laughed at a couple of weeks ago for buying a book. And it was like, a book? Why haven't you got a Kindle or an iPad? Or I get a little bit of joy from buying a book and sitting and reading a book. If that's what makes you happy, that's what makes you happy. You can't change that. You know, and I think I've had a tendency to try and do that in the past. Was actually what's everyone else doing? Oh, I'll try that martial arts, or I'll try this. Did I really want to do it? Probably not.
Just to say that you've in a conversation. I've done judo.
Whereas now it's like, no, I don't do anything. I have a glass of wine, I read my book, and I walk my dog, and I'm quite cool with that now. It's the acceptance of it, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that's it, mate. I think we've had a pretty good chat there.
Decent, that, mate.
So, I don't know if you've seen, but at the end of the podcast that I've done, there's 2 questions.
Yeah.
Have you seen them?
I have. Notes here somewhere.
So the first one is, where do you see yourself, or what would you like to accomplish in the next 12 months?
Okay.
I think I already know the answer, but...
Yeah, so we spoke about it, didn't we? So I think off the back of that trauma is, we're looking at now a completely different lifestyle. So we're looking to relocate west coast of Scotland, as far away from civilian society as possible. A little bit of land, maybe some animals, a couple of pigs, chickens, goats.
Pigs?
And almost become...
a bit sheepdog then or something.
I'd have to get a sheepdog, wouldn't I? Proper dog. Almost become a bit of a Jeremy Clarkson stroke David Beckham gentleman farmer type. Cool. I think that's where I'd be comfortable. So we're making some inroads to that. We're up there in a couple of weeks.
Little beehive.
Be all right, wouldn't it?
Yeah, a little beehive, nice, some
Right,
nice honey.
some eggs and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I've always wanted a goat, so I'm going to get.
Have you?
Yeah, I've always wanted a goat. Vincent van Goat. So a couple of goats. Yeah, just Potter.
Yeah, nice.
That's the plan. So we'll see how far we get with that.
And then if you could sit around the table with 3 people from the past, one of them being a family member who's no longer with us, and then 2 people from history, whoever them 2 people are. Could be anybody.
So a family member would definitely be my nan. Lost my nan a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Massive part of my life, and still is. Famous people, probably, I would say, one is probably still alive, and it's a random one, but it would probably be The Rock.
Yeah?
For numerous reasons, and I think he's just a great guy. I think you'd have a good old chat with him.
Would you be able to smell what he's cooking?
I think you would, wouldn't you? Can't do the eyebrow.
I can, I just haven't got no fucking eyebrows.
I was going to say it's the Botox, but that wore off. And the other one would probably be Elvis Presley. I just think he's a very interesting character, whether he's alive or not, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. He's probably with
don't know,
Tupac and Michael Jackson.
But I think to have a conversation with someone that's had that much hype and lived a life of that extent, I think it'd be a good conversation.
I've never really looked at Elvis much, but he was controlled a hell of a lot by the mafia, wasn't he? Which I didn't realise, because he didn't make a move without the was it the Chicago Mafia? I think it was
the mafia and his agents and all sorts.
Yeah,
basically, he was a puppet.
Yeah, I didn't realise that.
Yeah, and people sort of saw him as this icon, which he was and still is. But again, it's one of those, you don't know what goes on behind the scenes. So I think,
and he struggled with drug addiction and all that stuff, didn't he?
I think he does. Yeah. So yeah, I think The Rock and Elvis. Not sure where I'd fit into that so much, but more like the Pebble. But I think it'd be a good chat, man.
That's it, mate. Job done.
Fantastic.
Cool.
Thank you, bud. Appreciate that, Lee.